Hi everyone, I'm Lee Saville-Iksic, and this is the MeadowSong Podcast, where we tap into the healing, transformational power of music and myth, because every life is an epic story, and every experience a work of art. Before we get started with this first episode of the show, I want to let you all know that full transcripts of every episode will be available on the show's website. To find the transcript for this episode, go to MeadowSongPodcast.com. Each of the essays featured on the show will also be featured on my personal website, saville-iksic.com/essays. Today is Groundhog's Day, and I am reminded of a Groundhog's Day many years ago, and being in the car with my father that morning, and him saying that we'd be having 6 more weeks of winter before the arrival of spring because the groundhog saw his shadow that morning. As years went by, I learned more about Groundhog's Day and continued to delight at this quirky ritual, especially since Punxsutawney Phil and I shared the same home state. My father has always had a certain reverence for nature's holidays. On solstices, he would comment to my sister and I about it being the longest night or the longest day of the year. And on walks in the woods behind our house, he modeled a respect for the natural world, not only as a rich ecosystem to admire and preserve, but also as a source of wisdom from which we might learn if we could quiet ourselves enough to listen to what it had to say. When I was in high school, my father held a candle mass celebration with some other naturalist friends of ours. On the night of February 2nd, we lit candles and we voiced intentions we had for the new year. That dinner was, for me, the beginning of a far deeper appreciation for the significance of early February as I began to learn more of the cultural and spiritual traditions that have centered around this time of the year. It wasn't until later, though, when I had my own home and held my own Candlemas dinner with friends, that I learned that Candlemas was a feast day in the Christian Orthodox calendar. It's also called the Feast of the Presentation of our Lord Jesus and the Feast of the Purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And it marks 40 days after Christmas, when the baby Jesus would have been brought to the temple for presentation. Today, observers of the holiday light candles in dedication to the God-bearing Mother, and they feast in celebration. The lighting of candles in early February, however, precedes Christian tradition. The ancient Romans had the festival of Lupercalia, which involved rituals of fertility. Celtic tradition had Imbolc, an homage to the fertility goddess Brigid, who the Catholic Church later adopted as Saint Brigid, patron saint of, among other things, newborns and midwives. These early observances included the blessing of seeds and the purification of planting fields. It is also said that shamans of ancient villages would set out in early February to scour the countryside in search of hibernating rodents that may have left their dens, a sign of the approach of an early spring, coming full circle to our present-day celebration of Groundhog's Day. February 2nd is halfway between the winter solstice, representing death in Earth's life cycle, and the vernal equinox, representing the Earth's birth. So, as my father suggested when we spoke of it recently, we can think of early February as the point of conception for the new year. Groundhog's Day falls on the second day of the second month of the year. The number 2, of course, is the number of partnership. It represents the relationship between who we have been and who we are becoming, and the relationship between the ego and the soul. And in the case of most life on earth, it takes partnership to conceive of new life. 2 is also the number of duality, and to be conceived and made manifest in the world is to come into a world of duality, light and dark, good and bad, life and death, following this logic and the teachings of the mystical traditions. 2 is also then the number of paradox, and wholeness is never found on one side or another of duality, but only in the space in between. And so we find ourselves presently living in the spaces in between the opposites of duality. We are somewhere in between birth and death, heaven and earth, and our souls are experiencing life somewhere between the space of consciousness and unconsciousness. Of course, new life is conceived of in the space in between, in the merging of opposites. As a boy, the material logic of the Groundhog's prediction system never made much sense to me. I thought the presence of a shadow should mean more sun, and that more sun should mean spring is closer. Of course, this is not how the astronomy works. But now I also wonder if the shadow isn't also representative of something new that we might be conceiving of in ourselves during this time of year. Indicative of one of those great dualities, psychologist Carl Jung used the word shadow in reference to repressed parts of our psyche that have fallen into unconsciousness due to the ego judging them as unsavory. For example, if I learn as a child that it is bad to get angry, feelings of anger fall into my shadow, the part of me that I don't want to bring into the light. The thing about our shadow is that it is also the part of us that possesses great power and potential for transformation. When we can bring our shadow into consciousness, we are giving birth to a new part of ourselves, and we become more whole. Isn't it true that when we're setting intentions for a new year, we're choosing to become more conscious of something that has been neglected, or perhaps some untapped potential waiting to be developed? So perhaps the groundhog seeing his shadow only to return to his burrow for another 6 weeks is a way our culture has chosen to represent our capacity to see a cast out or latent piece of ourselves, which, by the way, could cause mischief in our lives should we choose to ignore it. And then we sit with that shadowy part of the self as it gestates and incubates in preparation to emerge as new life. So, to celebrate February 2nd this year, I've asked friends and family to share with me intentions they have for the new year, so that I might hold a space for those intentions and let them come out through the piano. In future episodes of the show, we will feature, in the same fashion, stories, dreams, and intentions submitted by listeners. But today, I will leave you with a little sampling of the improvisations that resulted from this project, Winter Seeds, as I've been calling it. To listen to any of the pieces in their entirety, go to saville-iksic.com/piano. Until next time, I wish you all things best and beautiful.